Well, there we have it. We finally went and did it. The world now has a 5-meter long, 2¾ ton, 400 horsepower, all electric, £75,000 Kia. And the company themselves call this a generation defining car. You know what worries me the most? I think they might be right. My name is James, this is the Kia EV9, and we have a lot to talk about. First things first, cards on the table. I really like Kia, both the cars and the company, with whom I have now had an excellent working relationship for the last 7 years. They were one of the first big manufacturers to support me when I was a small channel, and now, all this time later, I still really enjoy not just talking to them, but also driving the vehicles, because they are genuinely brilliant, with almost everything from the Stinger to the Picanto having something that I think appeals not just to the everyman, but the petrol head as well. In the interest of being fair and balanced, on the occasions I've gone to one of my 2 local Kia dealers, I haven't had such a good time, but from a journalistic point of view, I've generally nothing but good things to say about Kia and their products. And in that time, it has also been amazing to see how the company has evolved, how the model lineup has changed. But I would say that to many people, a Kia is still something they view as an alternative to your Fords, your Vauxhalls, perhaps even a Toyota. And in truth, some of the very best cars that I've driven from them have been more budget orientated. In fact, the now discontinued Kia Picanto GT Line S with the 1-litre turbo 3-cylinder is one of my favourite cars, full stop. And it is for that reason that I think the sheer concept of this is alien to a great many people. After all, this is a vehicle which in not just dimensions, but price as well, is comparable to the likes of a Range Rover Sport. As it is such a new thing, there is a good chance you might not have seen one of these in person yet, but at just over 5 metres, it is marginally longer than said Range Rover. At just under 2 metres, it is only a touch narrower, and at £65,000 for the entry-level EV9 Air, it is already the most expensive car Kia have ever sold in the UK, with this top GT Line S variant being almost £80,000. Most of the time when I review a Kia, I say it's kind of like a Range Rover, but it's half the price. With this, not anymore. What I find most curious is that the last car I had from Kia was the EV6, and both the 6 and 9 are soon to be joined by the entry-level EV3. But if you were to look at the 6 and 9 parked together, there doesn't really appear to be much of a family resemblance at all. Now, the EV3 has clearly taken many of the styling cues from this. It's very slab side and sort of cut off at every opportunity. A touch overstyled, but then so is every car these days. However, there really is almost no familial resemblance between the 6 and 9 at all. That is a really rather hunkered down, quite purposeful, sporty looking car, even in its entry-level guise. And I actually really do like it. It's one of these cars that appears to be a bit larger than it actually is. This, in many ways, is really the opposite. And it feels like, just from a visual perspective alone, that this and the 6 are the product of an entirely different company. And this is something I'm going to come back to a lot. Fortunately for me, as is Kia tradition, the model lineup is relatively simple, with there being just the 3 trim levels on offer. You have the entry-level Air, which is available as either a single-motor rear-wheel drive with 200 horsepower or a dual-motor all-wheel drive with 380. Above that, you then have the GT line, and then this, the GT Line S, and both of those come exclusively as all-wheel drive dual motor. All of them have a 99.8 kilowatt hour battery, which I think might be the largest in any EV I've ever tested. And that gives the entry-level rear-wheel drive car a quoted combined range of just over 350 miles, and the all-wheel drive variant a quoted combined range of just over 310. But do be aware, if you're not familiar with EVs, they work in a different way to combustion engine cars, and so if you're going to do a long journey, you can bank on that figure actually being a little bit optimistic. My experience in the real world with temperatures at about 7 to 10 degrees has been that on a full charge, you'll get about 240 to 260 miles out of this in motorway scenarios. Handily, as is also Kia tradition, the EV9 comes very well equipped, with even the base Air model having a lot of stuff as standard that other manufacturers would consider an option, including, but not limited to, parking sensors, front and rear, 360-degree cameras too, which honestly are very, very useful, more ADAS systems than you can shake a stick at, including blind spot monitor, blind spot collision avoidance, rear cross traffic alert, navigation-based smart cruise control, forward collision avoidance, multi-collision braking, highway driving assist, speed limit assist, everything. There's even a little setup in here that keeps an eye on you, and it knows if you're not looking at the road, which honestly has been a bit of a frustration, because as with many modern cars, it likes to beep a lot and tell you about things, and then when you look down to try and work out what it's beeping for now, it then proceeds to tell you off for not looking at the road, and it beeps at you for that as well. Daft. You've also got more useful stuff like drive mode select here, terrain mode select for the off-roading that you're never ever going to do, your usual stuff like traction control, ABS, tyre pressure monitoring, and an active bonnet system, which I believe means a sort of Nissan GT-R Jaguar style airbags for the front, and rear self-leveling suspension. Though note, I don't believe this is sat on air ride, certainly not all round, nor does it mention anywhere in here fully adaptive or adjustable suspension, anything like that, which the EV6 GT had. Then, if you go for the GT line, you'll get the dual motor all-wheel drive now as standard. You get 21-inch alloys, which this has, with 285mm wide tyres. 285mm 2145s. They're enormous. You get the GT line exterior styling, the roof rails up here, which I know a lot of people will find handy, driver power adjustable memory seat with front passenger power seat, premium relaxation seats for the driver and the front passenger, so you've got massage functionality, you've got heating, cooling, and there's even a handy button where if you press it, it'll just lean you right back like that, which I suppose is very handy if you're waiting to pick someone up at an airport or something like that. You've even got alloy pedals, and that lineup also gets you the terrain mode selector as well. The GT Line S, this then adds you the 14-speaker Meridian premium sound system, which is okay, it's not great. Meridian stuff is never as brilliant as people say. You've got a heads-up display, which is very helpful. You've then also got a front sunroof that tilts and slides, and a second sunroof with just a sliding cover behind it that I think really is quite useful. You can even have the car as either a 7-seater or, for the GT Line S, as a 6-seater with a pair of captain's chairs in the middle that will then rotate, which is quite cool. I like that. I mean, there really is a lot going on in this car, and it's filled with nice little details, like when you do want to wipe the rear window. I mean, the wiper itself actually is hidden nicely and neatly. You wouldn't know it was there, would you? But it is, and when you're trying to clean this off, if you've got it spraying out its spray, it's smart. First off, it feels like it's a blooming pressure washer. It's a real jet that comes out of it. But as the blade is coming over where it sprays, it stops. There's a lot of nice thought that has gone into this car. It is packed with nice little details. So it should be. There's enough space for them, isn't there? And on that topic, let's talk interior space, shall we? Because there's a good chance if you've decided you need a car this large, that's because you think you need the interior space. So, how good is it? This is the section of the review where I wish I could summon my friend Ben from Dad Cars. But alas, I cannot, so you'll have to instead put up with me blundering through it. First off, I quite like the materials. The leather in here is rather nice, and I must confess, when I first got in the EV9, I felt like it was just a step down on the quality of the EV6, but actually having lived with it for a bit now, no, the materials are nice. It's just the design and the style in some ways I'm not so keen on. And the grey, for some reason, the grey just always looks a little cheaper and nastier than it needs to be. The car is certainly no shortage of stuff. I mean, you've even got blinds in the back here, which are very handy and nice. And in terms of configuration, I think it's pretty good. So in the middle row, in 3-seater configuration, will slide forwards and backwards. You've also got a fair amount of recline, and should you want to access that rear row, it's easily done and kind of scary because you press this button and that will happen, or get down, press this button, no, or press this button, no, wait, there we go, put that down and then press. You can do that if you want to load luggage in. Let's get this back. I told you I wasn't very good at this sort of stuff. Talk amongst yourselves. Anyway, put that back up. It took a while to practice and I'm still not very good at it. Anyway, so let's just pretend you're loading someone in the back. Button there. That's really good. Yeah, I don't know how well you can actually see me there, but I'll put the headrest up and put this in place and possibly regret it. Oh, yeah, ow, ow. Okay, so I'd want to move this forwards a touch. Hello. But actually, no, this is good. I'm 5'10", with a long torso that I do like to mention at every possible opportunity. And actually, this is not... Oh! The rear seats recline also, should you need it. Quite some way, in fact. And all of this, by the way, can also be done from buttons in the boot. If you want to pop these down, press the button and the rears will go down and up electrically too. Then when you want to escape, press that and you are out. So for those with families, for those that need the space in here, this is a proper 7-seater with a generous amount of room. You could definitely take the family away in it. But it's up there I want to talk to you about a bit more, because that to me is somewhat less successful. I mean, look, it's not as if it's a bad place to spend your time, and there's a lot that I really like about it. These seats, nice materials, and like the back, they're very comfortable. You've got a nice big wireless charging pad for your phone here, wireless, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, more cup holders than you can shake a stick at, including the fancy little ones down here that I really like and would easily keep a child or 34-year-old YouTuber occupied for hours. You've got plenty of systems, functions, and I think the right amount of buttons. You've got temperature and fan controls here for your HVAC, volume control, and plenty of real physical controls on the wheel too. I also love the gear lever down here, which is elegant, simple, and really quite nice. Press the big EV button to turn the car on, then twist it forward for drive, twist it backwards for reverse, or gently for neutral, or push the side to put it into park. Far more intuitive than the Taycan's silly little pod racer toggle down here that you can't actually even see. I even appreciate the fact when you put the car into reverse, it gives you a little vibration, little bit of haptic feedback to tell you what you've done. Lots and lots of storage throughout, not just your cup holders, but also you've got a big aperture down here thanks to the flat floor that the car has. You've got controls here so that you can operate the passenger seat should you need to from the drivers. There's even USB-C sockets in the side of that, though I can see that going really, really badly wrong. A mystery thing down here that looks like a fingerprint reader, but honestly, I don't know what that's for. Little tiny cubby hole here, and it's all very decent. The heads-up display is great, nice and clear. I'm not in love with this, though. It's all trying to look very serious, very modern, and I did actually have a moment where I found myself feeling a little bit stupid because I just wanted to turn the radio on. I had Android Auto doing its thing, but I wanted the radio, and I spent a little while going, well, what do I press? Actually, it was the media button down here will then eventually take you out and give you some options, and I actually love these buttons down here. They are cleverly integrated, touch sensitive. That's actually quite a nice piece of design. This has grown on me in the time that I've had it, but when you're sat in this thing, you are reminded constantly of how big it is. I mean, the whole time. Handily, from this seat, you do get a pretty big view of that bonnet, but all that really serves to do is to tell you just how large a car it is you're really driving. And it is that, I suppose, that has been my biggest issue, because one of the things that I love about Kias, and one of the things that I love about Mini and Range Rover, is despite the fact those are big cars, they also drive really well. And with many of the smaller Kias being excellent to drive, including the EV6, I had high hopes for the EV9, but it didn't go quite so well. As you can probably tell, I have conflicting feelings about this car. At no point this week have I worked out whether I want to call Kia and ask them to take it away immediately, or if actually I could hold on to it for the rest of the summer. Now, in truth, a lot of it has to do with the car's size. There is no way around it, but this really is at the upper limit, if not slightly beyond, what you can get away with in the vast majority of situations here in Britain. I'm driving down what you would describe as your typical average country road. In fact, I know this is quite generous compared to some others, those down in Kent, Cornwall, Devon and the like. And I know I'm taking up all of my side. Every day that I've got out in this car, I've been somewhat thankful of the fact that I'm fairly sure nobody else out there has an EV9 yet. As it happens, I've seen loads and loads of EV6s. Those seem to have done quite well, and rightly so. It's a genuinely great car. But this, oh, it's such a bus. I took it down into London because, you know, why not? I went shopping with my mother and I thought, right, this is a good test. Let's take it into a car park at Stratford Westfield, in case you're wondering. And oh, there were moments where you're just going, oh no. I was genuinely certain, and, you know, it's not there yet. I haven't handed it back yet. I thought that there was no way I was going to be able to hand this car back to Kia without some kind of damage. I figured, look, it's just a given. It's going to happen. I mean, it does like to beep at you all the time, and that's one of the areas I've really not gotten on with the EV9. The ADAS systems are ludicrously intrusive. First off, you've got your lane keep assist. Now, that's not too bad, because though it does turn itself on every time there's a button on the steering wheel for you to turn it off, and you need to, because when you're already taking up all of the road, you haven't got any space left. And so if you do leave it on, it feels like the car is constantly fighting you for control of the wheel, and that's just not a nice feeling at all. That, though, not a problem. What is are all the other things the car likes to tell you about, including, chiefly for me, the speed limit warning. And that tells you what the speed limit is, which is fine, handy, nice, and it's generally been fairly accurate. But if you go over it by even a fraction, it will beep at you quite a bit, and then the warnings can change, and then occasionally it'll go past a sign that actually shouldn't be there or is for something else, and it'll read it, and then it'll tell you off. And even in a car park, when it's got the 5 mile an hour sign, it will beep at you because you're doing 6 mile an hour, and it's just irksome. But again, I wouldn't mind if you turned it off and it stayed off, but it doesn't stay off. And worse than that, you have to go into about 3 different menus and sub-menus to finally get to what you want, and then tell it that you don't want any of its nonsense. Thank you very much. And that is frustrating. Really, really frustrating. It feels unnecessary. And I know I've moaned many, many times before about how I don't get the whole obsession with safety, only to then put things in a menu, knowing you're going to be distracted while you're driving, trying to turn the damn thing off. That's just annoying. In terms of pace, it's fine. It's quick enough. You put your foot down, it goes. It's, of course, nowhere near as brisk as the EV6 GT, but here with near 400 horsepower, 700 newton meters of torque, that's 516 pound-foot, and exactly half that if you have the single motor setup. It goes for a 2 3/4 ton bus, which is going to be 3 tons by the time you've got the family in it. It's fine. Does the job. The steering, though, that is a disappointment, because this is another area where Kia generally are pretty darn good, and the EV6 actually is really nice, but this, well, it's just got no connection to the road whatsoever. And maybe that's because it's an enormous all-wheel drive, near 3-ton car with 285mm wide tyres all round, and so it's got to have lots of assistance, and with that assistance it's just robbed itself of all feel. But the whole time I've been driving this, the weather's been like this, so mixed. I mean, literally as I was putting the cameras on, it started raining, And you go through a bend going, "Oh, am I going to be okay? Do I have enough grip? Do I not?" We've had lots of floods and things recently, so there's lots and lots of water still out on the road and everything. And I do keep worrying that maybe I'm a little bit closer to the limit than I realise, but the car just does not communicate at all. Tells me nothing whatsoever. And that's a frustration. The suspension also is a little bit of a mixed bag. So when it's not being troubled, it's lovely, nice, and on the motorway it's reasonably cosseting, it's very pleasant, your visibility's all good and everything, and it's probably like being in one of those things. You know, Range Rovers, they're everywhere. But around town, over potholes, lumps, bumps, imperfections in the road, it's got this constant patter about it. It feels like it's got a bit of necessary stiffness to it just to keep that body mass in check. Oh, it also doesn't have a very good turning circle. I mean, I've just about managed to make this because I've known what I was doing, but if ever a car needed rear wheel steer, this is it. And it doesn't have it. The range has actually not proven to be too much of an issue. Once a car's got about 250 miles worth, that generally does just about everything I would ever conceivably need in one go, and bigger trips than that are going to be like 500-mile trips, and I'll want to stop off anyway. It's not been an issue. I haven't used any public charging points. It will take apparently a very fast charge, but the issue is any charging station that is quick enough to give this car what it can take is also ludicrously expensive. Not a Kia specific issue, this is just general EV issues, and I know if you do buy this from Kia, I think you get a charging card, so you get discount at certain stations, Ionity I think, but don't quote me on that. At home it's been generally fine, although I didn't want to talk to my charger for a little bit, but I think that was just a basic issue with the plug not being at quite the right angle. Something daft was going on, but for the most part it's been fine. The economy of it is not great. On this little run that I've just done, we've been averaging 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which is the worst I've got out of any EV on test ever. Now, a slightly fairer metric is over a longer distance, and in that regard it is a little bit better. It's been doing somewhere between sort of 2 and 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour, but that puts it only on par with the Porsche Taycan in the dead of winter when it was no degrees, and I did my fair share of complaining about that car, so it is only right that I do a bit of moaning about the Kia. The last EVs that I've had from them have done considerably better, at least 3 miles per kilowatt hour, and some of them, the e-Niro for example, that will happily do 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which entirely negates the advantage really of the larger battery. In practice, what this is going to mean is that if you are charging from home and you're in a scenario where you're regularly doing longer journeys, you need to be wary of exactly how much charge you have to put into the car, particularly if you're on a tariff where you only want to be charging for a set number of hours per night. It might be that in other more efficient cars you could get your 50-60 miles worth of range, which will do you for your commute, but in this you maybe only get half of that. That is an issue. The batteries are getting bigger, they're getting more efficient, they're getting better, which is great, but the rate at which we put electricity into these things at home is unlikely to change in any dramatic fashion in the near future. And here's the thing about this car, there's so much stuff about it I'm noticing just now, having had it already for about 5 days, like the fact even the middle seats have both heating and cooling for them. That's luxurious. You can even turn it on or off from the display here. And I do have to sometimes stop and wonder and go, what? We're in a world now where on a touch screen I can turn off the cooling for the seats behind me. Okay, yep, fine. A lot of this, of course, is going to be all part of Kia's march to make the brand bigger, better, and more appealing. But I am somewhat worried this is ultimately going to come at the cost of some of the other cars, the core products, the smaller, more entry-level stuff that I really fell in love with, as did many others. The issue with the EV9 for me is I think this is a result of Kia's globalization. It's built on their eGMP, their global modular platform for electric vehicles. And I think really what they actually need is like an EV 7.5. And I'm certain that Kia UK are already aware of this because, if you live in Britain, you might not know this, but for years there has actually been a car as big, I think if not bigger than this, available in the USA. It's called the Telluride. Here though, the largest Kia we ever got was the Sorento. The reason for that being they knew no one was really going to buy anything bigger than the Sorento, an already somewhat large car but not enormous. This is a bit bigger, and of course you need to have this so you can have the complete range, the 3, the 6 and the 9. But I really think there is room for a car bigger than the 6, smaller than this. This is great if you need all the space, if you need all the room. I'm somewhat disappointed that if you have got all 7 seats in play, the boot is actually a little bit disappointing, though if they're not, and they won't be for a lot of people a lot of the time, you've then got a car with a huge boot, and that's absolutely fine. But it just feels unnecessary. I know I also generally don't dabble with proper consumer advice, but when it comes to not just this car specifically, but certainly all the cars like it, I do have a very large and I think not unwarranted concern, which is the fact we're talking about a car here which is a part of a breed that is rapidly evolving. It's filled with lots and lots and lots of lovely tech, but in 5 years it's going to be out of date. I mean, I am amazed at the fact you can get it to walk forwards and backwards on the key. I mean, who needs a dog anymore? Tesla owners I know will be looking at me now going, oh, that poor backwards man, does he not know of these features that have been around for years? But the point is, this stuff is advancing really, really rapidly. You've got a huge, dirty, great big car. They tend to depreciate like nobody's business anyway. Combine that with the fact it's an EV, combine that with the fact it's full of technology, combine that with the fact it's a Kia, but it's really, really expensive. And if I was going to put 20 quid on what is going to be one of the biggest depreciating cars in Britain over the next few years, yeah, it's just I like driving it. It's nice enough, but I don't love driving it. It doesn't make me want to go out and drive it like the EV6 does. And I'm coming along here now going, suspension's all right, the steering's not nice. It goes well enough, it brakes okay and everything else, but it just is a thing. It just doesn't excite me, and most Kias do. This just feels like someone else built it and Kia stuck some things in it. I know that's not the case at all. If you want a more luxurious SUV, check out one of the Genesis products, built on the same platform, part of the same family, Kia, Hyundai, Genesis. It's a nice car. This, certainly not a bad one. But would I recommend anybody to buy it? Yeah, I suppose. If you really don't want a Range Rover, you need 7 seats, you want toys and everything, and you are quite happy that in 5 years, no one's going to want it. Because they won't. Do buy the EV6 though. That's a genuinely great car, regardless of whatever happens. But yeah, there we have it. That is my look at the Kia EV9. Nothing more to say really, is there? Other than thanks to Kia for lending it to me. Please let me have another car. And thanks to you as ever for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.